Welcome to the deep dive. You send us the sources, the things you're curious about.
And we dig in. We try to pull out the core ideas, the really important stuff for you.
Kind of like getting the essence without having to sift through everything yourself.
Exactly. You point the way, we do the exploring.
So today we're looking into some ancient Buddhist texts, specifically a story called the Sumanamālākāra Vatthu.
Right. It's the story of Sumanamālākāra. He was a garland maker. We've got a few different versions, actually.
Different takes on the same basic narrative.
Our mission really is to get why this story, Sumanamālākāra's story, has lasted. What's so significant about what he did? What's the lesson here?
And the hook, I think, is how this one simple act, just involving some flowers,
Yeah.
it triggers this cascade of really surprising, almost, miraculous events. It's quite a tale.
It really is. So where should we jump in?
Let's start with his everyday life. What was his routine?
Okay. Sumanamālākāra, the garland maker. His job was pretty straightforward. Every morning he had to deliver 8 bundles of jasmine flowers.
Jasmine. Nice. Who were they for?
For the king, King Bimbisara. And for doing this, he got paid 8 kahapanas.
8 kahapanas daily. Any sense what that meant? Was he well off, struggling, average?
That's a good point. It's tough to translate directly, but it was his steady income, what he and presumably his family lived on. So it mattered.
Right, reliable income. Okay, so he's doing his usual run, taking the flowers into the city.
Exactly. Just another day, you'd think. But then his path crosses with the Buddha.
Ah, the pivotal moment.
And it's not just, oh, there's the Buddha.
Yes.
He sees him surrounded by monks, yes, but the Buddha himself is, well, radiating.
Radiating.
A 6-colored light. The texts describe it with terms like immense Buddha power and majestic Buddha grace. It's clearly something extraordinary.
Wow, 6 colors. Was this normal? Did the Buddha always appear like this?
That's what's interesting. The texts make a point of saying no. Not always. Often, he apparently covers these rays with his robe, look more like a regular monk seeking alms.
Okay.
But sometimes, at really significant moments, like meeting Angulimala, the former bandit, or entering his hometown.
And the radiance would show?
Yes.
Yeah.
It seems to signify something profound was happening, or his presence was particularly potent. And on this day, entering Rajagaha, the capital, he was fully radiant.
So just imagine being Sumanamālākāra. You're going about your business, probably thinking about getting paid, and suddenly you encounter this luminous figure.
Yeah, the impact must have been immense. The text mentioned he saw the Buddha adorned with the 32 marks of a great man and the 80 minor characteristics.
Those are traditional signs of a highly attained being in Buddhism, right?
Exactly. So it wasn't just the light, it was the whole presence. And it says faith instantly arose in him, just like that.
But the flowers. He's holding the king's flowers.
Ah, yes, the dilemma. He's struck by this profound faith, this desire to honor the Buddha.
But these flowers are technically already promised, already paid for by the king.
Right, and offering them to the Buddha could mean serious trouble. The king might imprison him, maybe even execute him or banish him. It's a huge risk.
Talk about a conflict. Worldly duty versus this sudden, powerful spiritual calling.
It's a classic tension, isn't it?
Yeah.
He's weighing it up. The king's reward is material, is for this life only.
Okay.
But an offering to the Buddha, he believes that could bring benefit, happiness, the texts say countless eons, a much bigger picture.
And he makes the choice.
He does. He decides the spiritual path, the offering to the Buddha, is worth more, even if it costs him his life. His faith is that strong in that moment.
That's quite a leap of faith, literally risking everything.
It really is.
Yes.
So filled with this, joyful faith, he takes his 8 bundles, sometimes it's described as 8 handfuls.
Yeah.
And he throws them towards the Buddha.
Just throws them. And what happens? Does the Buddha catch them?
Not exactly. Something miraculous occurs. The first 2 handfuls, they just float. They form a canopy right above the Buddha's head.
Wow. Like a natural parasol?
Kind of. Then the next 2 handfuls float down and arrange themselves on the Buddha's right side, like a screen or covering of flowers.
Okay.
2 more do the same on his back, and the final 2 on his left.
So he's walking along essentially framed by these walls of jasmine flowers.
Exactly. Like he's encircled by, the texts say something like silver ribbons, but made of flowers, with just an opening at the front for him to walk.
That's incredible. And there's a detail about how the flowers were oriented.
Yes. The stalks pointed inwards towards the Buddha, and the petals faced outwards. A very specific arrangement.
And the flowers themselves, they weren't just falling.
No. That's another miraculous aspect. Even though they're cut flowers, technically lifeless, right? They stay perfectly in place. They move when the Buddha moves, they stop when he stops.
Unbelievable. A living offering, almost.
In a way, yes. But that's not all. Then come the rays of light.
More light.
Oh, yes. Emanating from the Buddha's body. Described like hundreds of thousands of lightning flashes going in all directions.
Okay, this scene is getting pretty intense. Flowers, light. The whole city must have noticed.
Absolutely. Imagine standing there seeing this radiant figure surrounded by floating flowers, now shooting out beams of light. It would stop you in your tracks.
What was the significance of the light understood to be? Just general holiness or something more specific?
It generally symbolizes the Buddha's purity, his wisdom, his immense spiritual power. The texts add that these rays then circled around the Buddha 3 times.
Like orbiting him.
Sort of, yeah. Before condensing, becoming the size of young palm trunks, apparently. And then these condensed rays shot ahead of the Buddha.
And that caused the stir in the city.
That seems to be the catalyst. The texts say the whole city became agitated, stirred up.
Agitated how? Like alarmed or?
No, more like stirred into devotion. It says that across the whole population, inside and outside the city walls, described as 18 kodis, which is a huge number.
Yeah.
Basically everyone, men and women, felt this urge to come out and make offerings, give alms.
So it sparked a massive spontaneous wave of religious fervor.
Totally. The streets filled with people, described as shouting with joy, waving thousands of cloths in the air as a sign of reverence, all moving ahead of the Buddha.
Amazing. Sumanamālākāra's personal act of faith just rippled outwards.
And the Buddha seemed to acknowledge this. The texts say he deliberately walked a specific route through the city, a main route where announcements were made.
Why?
To make sure everyone knew about Sumanamālākāra's merit, to make his devotion public knowledge.
So how was Sumanamālākāra feeling through all this? He threw the flowers, saw the miracle. What then?
He was apparently just filled with intense joy, described as 5-colored joy. He walked with the Buddha for a bit, feeling totally immersed in those rays of light.
Like bathing in the light?
Yeah, the text says like being submerged in vermilion dye, a very vivid image. Then he praised the Buddha, bowed, and just went home with his now empty flower basket.
Just went home.
Yeah.
So, but what about the king and his wife?
Yes. Reality check time. He gets home, and his wife. Well, she hadn't seen any of the miracles.
Oh, dear.
All she knows is the king's flowers are gone. And she is furious. She's terrified of what the king will do to them.
Understandable from her perspective.
Completely. She apparently scolded him harshly, and in her fear and lack of understanding, she decided she was leaving him, took the kids, and went straight to the palace.
To report him to the king?
Yes. To basically turn him in, probably hoping to save herself and the children.
Wow, what a turn. From spiritual ecstasy to potentially losing everything in a matter of hours.
It shows how different perspectives can be, doesn't it? Faith versus fear. But then the story takes another twist with the king.
King Bimbisara, what does he do?
When Sumanamālākāra's wife arrives and tells her story, something extraordinary happens to the king.
The king?
Yes. Upon seeing her and hearing what happened, King Bimbisara apparently attains the first stage of enlightenment, Sotapadhi.
Just like that. From hearing this story, what does Sotapadhi mean again?
It means stream enterer. It's the initial breakthrough in Buddhist understanding, seeing reality more clearly, getting on the irreversible path to full enlightenment. It's a huge deal.
So the king has this profound spiritual insight, triggered by the wife's complaint.
Seems so. He's suddenly filled with faith himself, understands the foolishness of the wife's fear in the face of such a meritorious act. He questions her, understands the full picture, sends her away, and decides he needs to honor the garland maker.
That's incredible. The consequences of that flower offering just keep unfolding in unexpected ways.
Totally unexpected. The king immediately goes to find the Buddha, and the Buddha, seemingly knowing this would happen.
He waited.
Yes, he deliberately waited at the palace gate. This allowed the public gathering there to witness the king's actions, too, further highlighting Sumanamālākāra's deed.
Clever.
The king, now understanding, quickly arranges for a pavilion to be set up right there.
For the Buddha and the monk.
Yes, and he offers them a meal, alms. And it's mentioned that even after the meal, as the Buddha leaves to go back to the monastery.
Let me guess, the flowers were still there.
The 4 flower arrangements, the canopies, were still miraculously surrounding him, still accompanied by this huge, joyous crowd. The visual spectacle continued.
Reinforcing the significance for everyone present.
Definitely. So, after all this, the king summons Sumanamālākāra.
Okay, the moment of truth. Or reward, maybe.
Reward,
Yeah.
definitely. The king asks him What were you thinking right before you threw those flowers? Weren't you scared?
And Sumanamālākāra tells him,
He says, essentially, yes, I thought I might die, but I decided to offer them anyway, sacrificing my life for the Buddha.
wow.
The king is deeply impressed. He calls him a great man and gives him this enormous reward. It's called the all-8 great gift.
The all 8, what did that include?
Get this. 8 elephants, 8 horses, 8 male slaves, 8 female slaves, 8 sets of really fancy ornaments, 8,000 kahapanas.
8,000, that's 1,000 times his daily wage.
Exactly. Plus, 8 beautifully adorned women from the palace and 8 prime villages.
8 villages. He became a wealthy landlord overnight.
Pretty much. An absolutely massive reward, acknowledging the immense value the king now placed on his act of faith.
So the immediate consequences were pretty spectacular. What about the longer view?
Well, Venerable Ananda, the Buddha's attendant, he sees all this public rejoicing, the huge crowds all day.
He must have been wondering about the karmic payout, so to speak.
Right. He asked the Buddha, how much merit did this man actually gain from this offering?
Good question. What did the Buddha say?
The Buddha emphasizes that this wasn't some small thing Sumanamālākāra did. Sacrificing your life, even the willingness to do so out of pure faith. That's hugely significant.
So the reward wasn't just the worldly stuff from the king.
Not at all. The Buddha says that because of this act, Sumanamālākāra won't be reborn in any unfortunate state. No hells, no animal realms for 100,000 eons.
100,000 eons, that's almost unimaginable.
It's a vast time scale. He'll just cycle between human and heavenly rebirths. And eventually he will become a Pacceka Buddha, a self-enlightened Buddha.
A Pacceka Buddha, that's someone who achieves enlightenment alone, right? But doesn't teach extensively like a Sammasambuddha.
Correct. They achieve liberation for themselves. And he'll be known as Pacceka Buddha Sumana. So that single offering set him on a path to ultimate liberation.
Incredible. From a simple garland maker to a future Buddha.
And just as a final visual detail, the text notes the flowers themselves remained at the monastery gate when the Buddha went into his private room. A lingering reminder.
So the story doesn't quite end there.
There's a concluding scene. Later that evening, the monks are gathered, talking amongst themselves.
About Sumanamālākāra, no doubt.
Exactly. They're marveling at all his courage, the miracles, the instant, massive rewards, both worldly and spiritual.
Understandable. It's quite a story.
And then the Buddha comes out from his chamber, joins them, and asks what they're discussing.
Standard practice for him, checking in with the monks.
Yes. They tell him, and he affirms their wonder. He says basically that Sumanamālākāra's actions are the kind one should aspire to, actions that don't lead to regret later.
Actions done with pure intention.
Precisely. Actions that, when you look back, only bring joy. And then he delivers a specific verse in Pali.
Which says,
Tanya kamakata sadhu yakat pananotapati yasapatu sumanovipaka paisevatiti.
Okay, and the meaning for us.
It translates roughly as, that deed is well done if one does not repent having done it, and if one enjoys its result with pleasure and joy.
A perfect summary. The quality of the action is tied to the state of mind before, during, and after. No regrets, only joy.
It ties it all together beautifully. It wasn't just the outward act, but the inner state, the faith, the willingness to sacrifice, the resulting joy that made it so powerful.
And that resonates.
Apparently so. The story concludes by saying that after the Buddha gave this teaching, based on Sumanamālākāra's example, 84,000 beings who were listening gained insight into the Dharma.
84,000. So his one act ultimately helped awaken thousands of others.
The ripple effect just kept expanding.
Okay, so wrapping up this deep dive, the story of Sumanamālākāra is just packed with meaning, isn't it?
Absolutely. It powerfully shows how selfless devotion, real faith and action can have these incredible results, both right away, like the king's gifts.
And in the very, very long term, like avoiding bad rebirths and eventual enlightenment.
And for you listening, maybe the aha moment is seeing how something that looks simple on the surface, giving flowers, can be profound. It's about the why and the how, the intention, the faith, the willingness to let go of self-concern.
That's what unlocks the power. It really highlights these core spiritual ideas in a very vivid, memorable way.
Definitely. It makes abstract concepts like merit and karma very concrete.
So maybe the thought to leave you with is this. Reflecting on your own life, what actions, even small ones, are done with an intention that brings you joy now and you know won't bring regret later?
Yeah, what deeds feel truly well done in that sense, described by the Buddha. It invites you to think about the quality of your own intentions, doesn't it? And the potential impact of even seemingly simple acts of generosity or faith.